Emily's boxes. "What do you think we should do?" Patricia asked. "Well," Anne said, "I am planning to go. After all, Emily and I were friends for a long time, and it would seem strange not to be there. Not that they had seen a lot of each other in recent years, but still." "I suppose it's in a church," Pat said, and sniffed audibly over the phone. "Yes." "A Catholic church?" "Yes." "Well, it would seem strange not to go, but then it's going to be horribly strange being there as well. Enemy territory. Funerals are never exactly comfortable. And then, of course, well, you know." Anne tapped her fingers on the table. "I know it's all rather awkward, but it would seem wrong not to go. I don't intend to be too," what was the word she wanted? "Obvious." The silence stretched. They had grown up in other times. Anne had never entirely abandoned her caution and discretion. "Don't you think it's about time they knew?" Patricia finally said. "That was Emily's choice. I think we should respect that. Even now she's dead. Especially now she's dead." After she'd rung off, Anne went over to her extensive bookshelves, her finger running over the ridges of each spine, looking for the glossy green and bitten apple of Virago Press, seeking one particular title. She found it eventually. The pages a little curled and brown with age. The cover depicted two faces in profile, the gender somewhat indeterminate. The book had had many different covers before and since, reflecting changing patterns, changing fashions, illustrating different angles on the book. This was the copy that Emily had lent her back when they were students, the book she had insisted Anne keep, and which marked the passing between them of an understanding, displacing the need for awkward declarations. Patricia rang again 2 days later. "I just thought you should know I've been in touch with the crowd and everybody wants to be there, so I hope that's okay." She sounded a little breathless. Okay with whom? It wasn't as if Anne was organising this, or that any of it was her responsibility. "I can let you have her brother's phone number," she said. "It might be worth letting him know how many are coming." "Oh, yeah, sure. But can't you? He knows you." "He does not know me." Despite having been Emily's friend for 30 years, Anne had never met any of Emily's family. Even those last weeks in the hospital, Emily had been precise about visiting times, keeping the two halves of her life apart. But Emily must have given Anne's number to Richard because he had rung her 3 days after Anne's final visit, 2 days after Emily had died of lung cancer. "I do hope you can come to the funeral," he had said. He sounded so much like Emily. "You're better at these things," Patricia said, somewhat lamely now. Even at 49, she could be so like an 18-year-old that Anne had met all those years ago. "Okay," Anne said. "Okay, how many are coming?" Patricia reeled off a dozen names. "And what will they be wearing?" Anne wanted to ask. But it was not for her to insist on dress code, to suggest that the woman ought to be, well, not too obvious. The funny thing was, the younger generation weren't. They didn't see the need to brand their identity. Gone were the brutal haircuts and masculine cut to clothes. Nowadays, lesbians even wore makeup and heels. "Looks like a flaming hen party," Patricia had said the last time the two of them went to a gay bar. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "The old days, fighting against the odds for principles." "No," Anne replied. "I like that society has moved on. And it isn't a big deal anymore." It would be perverse to lament the decline in homophobia, not to celebrate the civil partnerships and diversity policies at work. She, of course, enjoyed the fact that lesbian literature was considered mainstream now, could be found in libraries and high street shops, but she understood what Patricia meant. She remembered the closeness born of adversity, the us and them sense of righteousness and indignation which had bound people together. She remembered the thrill of clandestine discovery amidst the stack of books and dust of a dim-lit shop. Times had changed, yet Emily hadn't. Why on earth in this day and age had Emily not told her family that she was gay? Anne failed to find an answer. But a funeral was not the place for an outing. Arriving amidst drizzle at the ancient stone building, Anne wondered when she had last been inside a church. She'd been in the odd C of E from time to time for weddings, gritting her teeth against the flouncy dresses and ritual. She had not set foot in a Catholic one, not since she was 18, and finally brave enough to tell her parents that they couldn't force her. It was something that had drawn her to Emily from the beginning. The fact they both endured convent schools where black-robed nuns lectured them on the evils of extramarital sex. They discovered they had much more in common, of course. It was Emily who had recognised something in Anne that Anne had hardly dared acknowledge even to herself. Emily, who had casually passed on a well-thumbed copy of The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall, adding airily that it was her all-time favourite book. And after Anne had said that she loved the novel, how she cried at its end, Emily insisted, "You must come to London with me for the day. I'll show you something." As Anne walked under the arch at the back of the church, the scent of incense hit her, making her nauseous, reminding her how the battle was not yet won. Just a month ago, the news had covered Pope Benedict's visit. Same-sex marriage was a dangerous and insidious challenge to society, he had said, whilst not bothering to condemn paedophile priests. No, of course not. She had snapped the radio off. What did the BBC think they were doing, giving airtime to that bigoted little man? She had thought about writing a letter to complain, but hadn't. Now here she was, the enemy camp. Around her swarmed Emily's extensive family. Richard had been the brother that Emily was closest to, but there were other siblings and endless cousins, all of whom had spawned offspring, judging by the crowds. Wrinkled faces could be spotted beneath dark hats, aunts and uncles presumably. The throng exuded black-clad respectability, as if none of them had noticed the times had changed. And nowadays people referred to funerals as being a celebration of life. Amidst the sombre gathering, Anne spotted Patricia and her gang. Impossible not to notice them. It wasn't that they wore the dungarees and badges which they might have worn 30 years ago. Not all their hairstyles shunned femininity, and anyway, lots of women preferred short, sharp cuts. There was even the odd skirt. Nonetheless, it was somehow obvious. The fact they were a solid clump of women, it was obvious to Anne anyway. She hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Should she join the group with Patricia and merge into the women-only group? Should she remain alone? Should she seek out Richard? Or would he be perplexed or dismayed by the turnout of guests and somehow blame her? It wasn't as if she even knew what he looked like. Except she did. Because she realised that the man standing 5 yards away had such a look of Emily. She must have been staring because he was looking quizzically back, then walking towards her. Too late to avoid him now. "Hello," he said. "I'm Richard, Emily's brother." "Yes, I know, I guessed. You look like her." He smiled. He had Emily's smile. Everyone always said that. "I'm Anne. We spoke on the phone." "Yes, I thought you might be. Emily always spoke warmly of you. Funny how we never met." "It's a good turnout," she said. Small talk at funerals was so difficult. The milling crowd seemed incongruous. Emily had always cut a somewhat solitary figure, not in the sense of failing to have family and friends, but rather in the depth of her privacy. "There's Catholic families for you," Richard said. "But I'm glad to see her friends made it too." He gestured to the all-female group. "Yes." She felt the need to explain, to apologise, but for what exactly? "I never met any of Emily's friends," he continued. I never met her family either. I never met any of her lovers. No. Or knew for certain if she had any. He was looking at Anne questioningly. Was he asking her? She smiled non-committedly. Even she didn't know, not fully, the ins and outs of Emily's affairs. They had endlessly dissected the loves and losses of fictional characters. They had been more reticent about their own. I was wondering, I know this is very short notice, but would you want to say something during the service? Oh, no, surely no. It wouldn't have to be long, just a few words about how you met, who her friends were. I'm not sure. I know it might feel awkward. Awkward didn't even begin to describe it. He was looking at her intently. I did know, he said quietly. I think I always did, in a way, right from when we were children. He hesitated. About her sexuality. He pronounced the word deliberately, not leaving room for ambiguity. I always thought at some point she'd talk to me. I never seemed to find the time or place to bring it up. Then, when she was dying, I kept thinking I'll say something tomorrow, or perhaps she would. But she didn't. I didn't. And then when it was clear she had so little time, I really did think tomorrow and no later. But when I got to the hospital, she was already unconscious. We'd run out of time. Anne swallowed. It felt like swallowing a stone. And the others, she asked. I can't imagine they don't know, he said. Or they'd really care. Even Catholics tend to form their own views these days. His fingers twiddled with his black tie. And if some of them have chosen not to know and they do care, well, to be honest, I don't. The service proceeded with the dreary organ music and that man in silly robes up on the platform blathering on about God, life and after death. The wooden box containing Emily's body lay bedecked in flowers up at the front, surrounded by images of sexless angels and doe-eyed virgins. Anne went along with the standing and the sitting. She continued sitting when others knelt. Let us pray. The words intoned from the front, but Anne's mouth remained firmly closed through the prayers and hymns. She shut her ears to the drone of readings from the Bible. The lesbian Bible was how people described the well of loneliness, Emily had said, before adding laughingly that it was a better read than the actual one, even if it did contain less sex. Anne inhaled the scent of oldness and tradition and remembered back. Emily, leading her along Charing Cross Road, her smile promising a secret surprise, her smile widening as she opened the door of Silver Moon. An old-fashioned bell tinkled. The air smelled of print. Dishevelled, crowded aisles were packed, ceiling to floor, with books by and about women. The politics of gender and sexuality, biographies of overlooked female figures, feminist fiction. The collection of lesbian novels, so many books depicting love between women, seemed a kind of paradise back then, though perhaps not the one the priest in the front had in mind. Richard took the podium now, and Anne snapped back to the present. She listened as Emily's brother described a woman she herself did not really know, a devoted aunt with endless time and energy for nieces and nephews, a more than dutiful daughter to her ageing and then dying parents. Then he talked about the woman in a hospital bed, a naturally slender frame wasted, struggling to suck oxygen through her damaged lungs, but never losing her sense of humour or involvement in other people's lives. Anne fought back against the welling up of tears. Now it was her turn. She walked up to the front and looked down at the sea of black. I first met Emily when we were 18, she said. We were both at Oxford University, both studying English literature and struggling with the language of early medieval times. also very archaic and male-centric, she smiled. Outside our studies, though, we devoured modern fiction, and I shared so many books with Emily over the years, and other things too, of course. Anne remembered passionate discussions deep into the night, opinions on the novels they read. Newer writers were less apologetic than Radcliffe Hall. Rita Mae Brown, with her ruby fruit jungle, was all fire, fury and defiance. They admired her heroine. They did not love or weep for her. Everyone always thought of Emily as a very private person, and of course she was. But that didn't mean she didn't feel things deeply, or that she couldn't be warm and intimate in her own way. The sort of friend who would offer sympathy and whiskey late into the night. And it wouldn't be until the next morning that you realised it was you who had done all the talking. She liked, I think, to keep different elements of her life contained, to put them in separate boxes. She liked to be different versions of Emily, according to who she was with. Anne looked down at her fingers, which had intertwined to form a tight knot in front of her. Her heart pounded in her throat. She had so much to say. How Emily was the founder of a lesbian magazine that had endured for over a quarter of a century. How she had volunteered time at the Gay and Lesbian Helpline, offering advice and understanding to those who were unhappy or confused, those suffering from bullying and discrimination. How she'd been a faithful friend to so many in their circle. How, for all there were modern books with fashionable views, Radcliffe Hall's tragic heroine had kept her special place in Emily's heart. The heroine who pleads for understanding, who sacrifices her own chance of happiness on the altar of the world's opinion, putting another's happiness before her own. Above Anne's knotted fingers, the front pew was packed with people of a certain generation, reminding her of her own parents. The silence seemed to stretch for hours. Mum and Dad had never really accepted who and what Anne was. Being honest had not brought them closer. So, I suppose, she continued slowly, we all have our own Emily and our own memories of the things she chose to share. And each one of us should celebrate that person. She looked ahead as she walked back down the aisle, avoiding Richard, avoiding Patricia, hoping they would understand. Whatever Emily's reasons, no matter how unreasonable, she had kept her secrets close. It was not for Anne to open out Emily's boxes, to breach the well of her privacy. Not at her funeral, not from a pulpit. There was, however, still the reception to come.